Welcome back to Luxura. You're listening to the second episode of our Learning to Say No Without Guilt series. And today we are looking at episode 2. Good people still have boundaries. In the last episode, we discussed why saying no often feels like sin. Now, if you grew up in African homes, church community, or cultures that valued respect and sacrifice, there's probably a lie that you've carried along without questioning. And that lie is this: that good people don't need boundaries. That if you are truly kind, truly respectful, and truly godly, you would make space for people even when you don't have any space. So somewhere along the line, we learned that boundaries make you cold. That kind of people don't say no, and that godly people are always available. But you know what? That belief is quietly destroying a lot of good people. And today, we are dismantling that lie. In many of our homes, goodness was measured by compliance. You were taught, don't talk back, don't refuse help, don't question elders, don't disappoint people. So when an aunt asks, you agree. When a leader calls, you respond. When family needs you, you stretch. Not because you have the capacity, but because saying no feels disrespectful. I grew up learning that endurance was more admirable than honesty. So even when something did not sit right with me, I only said yes and then trust that I would be able to cope. And you know what? That pattern gradually followed me into adulthood. And so many of us grew up equating goodness with endurance. You were praised for being patient even when you were hurt, staying silent even when uncomfortable, showing up even when depleted. So when you try to set a boundary, it feels like you are becoming a bad person. I've had moments where I thought, if I say no, will I still be seen as loving? If I pull back, will people still see my heart? And that fear kept me overextending beyond my limit. Church is often where the struggle becomes spiritualized. You are told, God will strengthen you. It's service to the Lord. Don't quench the spirit. So you serve every time, you volunteer even when you are tired, you show up even when you are empty. I remember seasons where I didn't even pause to ask God, is this mine to carry? I just assumed saying no meant I was lazy or uncommitted. People call it faithfulness, but growing up, I recognize it as burnout. Now here's something we don't talk about enough. You can be kind, but still be betraying yourself. There were seasons when I was known as dependable, always there, always available. But inside, I was tired, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically. I kept saying yes to the things I didn't even have the capacity for. And instead of becoming more loving, I became quietly resentful. I was angry at people. I was angry that I didn't feel free to choose myself. That was when I realized that kindness without boundaries produces resentment, not love. In our work culture, especially as young adults, saying no feels dangerous. You don't want to be seen as unserious. You don't want to lose favor. You don't want to be replaced. So you stay late. You take on extra tasks. You respond even when you're exhausted. I've had moments where I agreed to things simply because I didn't want to be seen as difficult. But what I didn't realize was this: over availability does not equal excellence. Most times, it often equals quiet resentment. Boundaries feel unloving for so many of us because we were never taught that love includes honesty, care includes limits, and compassion includes discernment. So when we finally say no, it feels harsh, even when it is right and healthy. I remember the first few times I said no and didn't over-explain myself. I felt uncomfortable, even almost rude and disrespectful. But nothing bad happened. What actually happened was that I began to respect myself more. And guess what? That changed how I showed up. Now let's talk about Jesus again, because he is our clearest example. Jesus was compassionate, deeply compassionate, but he wasn't constantly accessible. Jesus loved crowds, but he knew he didn't belong to the crowd. Mark 1:35-38, Jesus withdrew to pray, even when the crowds were looking for him. He didn't let urgency override obedience, never. There were times he healed everyone, yet there were times he walked away. His love was intentional, not impulsive. So always remember that Jesus healed a lot of people, but not all people. He engaged crowds, but invested in a few. You know what? His compassion had direction. One of my fears when I started setting boundaries was this: what if I lose my softness? What if I become distant? But what I noticed was the opposite. When I stopped overextending, I noticed that I became more present. When I stopped resenting my yes, I noticed my yes became genuine. I started showing up from choice, not pressure. Boundaries didn't harden my heart, it protected my heart. Even the scripture never glorifies self-neglect. Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23, guard your heart with all diligence. Guarding requires discernment. John 2:24, Jesus did not entrust himself to everyone. Even Paul knew when to withdraw, when to rest, and when to delegate. I must tell you this: boundaries don't make you selfish. It makes you faithful to what God has entrusted into your hands. One of the hardest part of boundaries is how people interpret it. Some will assume you're no longer kind, you've changed. I've had moments where pulling back was misunderstood. Not because I did something wrong, but because people were used to unlimited access. That doesn't make your boundaries wrong. It makes your boundaries unfamiliar. I've learned that people often react not because you are wrong, but because they are comfortable with your silence. Boundaries don't offend healthy people. Boundaries clarify expectations. Being good doesn't mean being endlessly available. It means being honest. It means being aligned. It means loving from wholeness. A drained person cannot love well, no matter how good and pure their intentions are. A full cup can pour, but an empty one can only spill. So today, I would love you to sit with these questions. Are you being kind, or are you being afraid of disappointing people? There is a difference, and the answer may change your life. So finally, declare this with me: I can be loving without being limitless. My boundaries do not cancel my goodness, and my boundaries must honor God and protect my heart. So in our next episode, we'll be talking about what happens after you say no, the second guessing, the guilt, and how to stand firm without becoming hard. Until then, keep on learning, and remember, unlearning is a process. However, stay true to yourself. Do well to like, subscribe, share, and turn on the notification button so you get informed whenever new episodes drop. Also follow us on our social media platforms at Luxora Officials on Instagram, on Facebook, and on TikTok. This is Luxora, your journey through struggles into light, and I'm your host, Ebube Chukwu.